Today on the process, I want to talk about my new short on the main channel. Welcome everyone to the channel. I'm Stephen Ray, and today we're talking about my video, Real Life Ooblets. Before we begin, I want to say sorry that it's been a second since uploading. I'm going to try to stay as consistent as possible, though as I dive back into making videos for the main channel, uploads will be a bit all over the place, so please forgive me. With that said, let's jump into the making of Real Life Ooblets. About 2 months ago, a game called Ooblets went into early access. It's basically a cross between Harvest Moon and Pokemon. I watched the trailer, and about at the halfway point, there's a scene with a character sitting on a couch surrounded by ooblets. These little creatures being like chaotic toddlers really painted the picture of what they would be like if they were real. So I took that scene as the setting and came up with a handful of ideas for some ooblets to act out. Now that's pretty straightforward. Shoot the scenes and put some ooblets into them. Now the problem, I have almost zero experience with 3D modeling and no experience with rigging, texturing, or character animation. You know, just everything someone would need to know to do a video like this. Now 6 years ago, I made a video about an app that made notifications real. That was the first and last time I tried doing CGI using 3ds Max. At the time, it was pretty taxing on my laptop, so I planned to pick back up learning as soon as I could upgrade. Fast forward to now, new up-to-date PC, wanting to get back into learning 3D, now I just needed a place to start. For me, the way I learn best, for better or worse, is to just jump into a project and learn as I go. To keep that motivation, I have to be working on something I really want to make. So once the idea for Real Life Ooblets was clearly playing in my head, I had to make it. Now I pretty much don't remember anything about 3ds Max, plus I can't really afford it right now. So I turned to Blender. Over the past couple years, I've been seeing people make some incredible stuff with it. And being right in my price range, I decided that would be the best way to go about it. So first, I had to learn how to use a whole new program. Luckily, there's an awesome guy named Andrew Price, and he runs the Blender Guru channel. I would not have been able to make this video if it wasn't for his tutorials. So I started with his how to make a donut video. It's pretty much the go-to for anybody trying to learn Blender. It's a fantastic tutorial to teach you how to make something from start to finish and give you a pretty good idea of the tools. So for the next month, I dove in and started learning how to model, texture, and rig these characters. The goal was to learn the essentials I needed to bring these characters to life without worrying about them being perfect. Now doing things this way isn't very ideal. You want to go in and make sure you really understand the process and how to do things correctly. I constantly had to fix problems I could have avoided if I was a little more patient. Though making mistakes, then finding and fixing them, makes those lessons stick better, at least for me. But it's a very frustrating way to go about it. So for the next couple weeks, with complete disregard to a sleeping schedule or life, I put about 90 hours into Blender, going through the whole process of modeling, painting, texturing, and animating these characters a dozen times until I felt comfortable with the tools and process. Going from this to this. Next was to figure out the other characters I wanted for the short. I simply scrolled through the list, looked for characters that caught my eye, and wouldn't be too hard to model. Then it was time to shoot. Setup was simple, just a single room and basic lighting. I shot this on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K with a Canon 24-105. The main lighting coming from the window with additional fill from my Rayden LED panels. After everything was set up, I stood in the center of the scene and took a 360 photo to use for reflections and lighting for the characters. If you needed absolute realism, you would want to take an HDRI of your location. But for a simple idea like this, it wasn't necessary. To make sure post-production was as smooth as possible, I used this chicken as reference for positioning, scale, and lighting since it was about the same size as the characters would be in the video. Once I had my framing, I recorded the focal length and f-stop for each shot. My pro tip for shooting something like this with a zoom lens is to stick to the focal lengths that are marked on your lens. Since the 24-105 has markings for 24, 35, 50, 70, and 105, I was sure to stick to those focal lengths. I did this to make setting up my scene in Blender easier and more accurate. In the camera settings in Blender, I set the appropriate focal length for each scene. The last thing to do was to change the sensor size to the size of my camera. I shot on the Pocket 6K, and that has a sensor size of 23.10 by 12.99. So in the camera settings, I left the sensor on auto and plugged in the horizontal value of the sensor. This more or less gave me the accurate field of view for each shot. Then it's just a matter of lining everything up. Since I couldn't find any simple ways to get After Effects tracking data into Blender, I decided not to do any tracking shots for this short, and to not make everything more challenging than it already was. So after all my shots were set up, it was time to animate. Now a few weeks is not enough time to really learn animation. So I used a website called Mixamo to do about 90% of the animations. Since the characters aren't perfectly humanoid, I had to clean up some of the animations and keyframes. Other than that headache, it was decently smooth. though there are still plenty of problems with the models. The only shots I had to animate by hand were the cut push and the ending flight. All in all, after the bulk of the learning process was done, finishing the video took about 9 days from shooting to upload. It's been a great learning experience and re-sparked that love of learning something new and challenging. And with that, I think I'll end the video right here. I hope you liked my little short and this simple breakdown. I don't have any set schedule for the main channel, but the goal is to get at least one video out per month. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to my main channel, links everywhere, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I post a lot of what I'm working on to my story if you want some behind the scenes, as well as a lot of memes. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.